church. Welcome to our Sunday service. We're always glad to have you. Let's start off with a word of prayer. God, we come to you now and we thank you and we praise you for your goodness. Everything from the warm weather and the creative ways to celebrate friendships and even the provisions through these hard times, God. I pray that you continue to keep us safe and continue to provide for us and continue to keep us close to you, God. And even in this message coming up, God, I pray that you work in our hearts to reveal something new about you, something that we can reflect on and something that leads us to knowing you more and to worship you, God. Work through my weakness and work through the distractions and the tangent thoughts that pop into our heads, God. Thank you again for all your goodness. In your name we pray. Amen. So I actually want to start off this week with a confession. And it's actually a terrible one. It's one that I've always shamed others for, and I've even ridiculed them. And now I have fallen into the exact same trap as them. Embarrassingly, right before COVID started, I fell into this addiction called Korean dramas. Yes, it's just those terrible, cheesy, lovey-dovey, sappy dramas, and I'm totally hooked, and I'm feeling feelings I haven't felt since I was 15, and I'm all angsty and hormonal, and since from the month of March to July, I've finished 6 already. But do you know what the worst thing about K-dramas are? It's actually the finales, right? The end, because you go through this painfully excruciating withdrawal. I mean, think about it. You've spent so much time investing into the characters because you were there when the couple first met and fell in love, right? And you were there when one got amnesia and the other one was trying to help them remember, and then they snapped out of it just in the nick of time. And you were there when they got out of that weird love triangle. You were there for the whole thing, right? They're very much a part of you that it hurts when it ends, because you know that the end of the series means the end of their lives. And you know that it wasn't real. And you'll never find anyone or any couple as epic as the ones in the K-dramas. But I have good news for us. In the Bible, we actually find some epic characters. And they're real, right? And their stories, they don't end, but they actually continue with us all the way till now. And one of those characters is Peter. So today, we're actually starting a new series that focuses on the life of Peter. And I'm super, super stoked for it, because I remember years ago, I was talking to a close friend of mine, and we were talking about potential sermon series. What would be awesome? We were like, wouldn't the life and transformation of Peter be the most epic series ever? I mean, it's so raw and it's so relevant, right? Peter's life so accurately represents the struggles of all Christians, the ups and the downs, the spiritual highs and the crippling doubt, moments where we're like, I'm so faithful, and then moments where we're not even sure what to believe about God, right? Peter's story actually shows us what a relationship with God looks like. As we look at our first story about Peter, we'll treat it kind of like a journey, right? And the journey, it shows us that how a relationship with God begins. And before you start ignoring me and zoning out because you're all like, I already have a relationship with God, I'm a Christian, hear me out. Even though we're talking about beginnings, the things we see in the beginning are actually ongoing throughout the whole relationship, throughout the whole process, actually throughout all of eternity. For example, if the question was instead, how does becoming an athlete begin? And I said 3 things: with strength training, with hand-eye coordination, and with proper diet. Do you get to ignore all those things once you become an athlete? No, right? Even Olympians who are at the top of their game, they still keep up with all of that. So that means that in our relationship with God as well, the things in the beginning are important in all stages of a Christian life. So the question, how does our relationship with God begin? And my answer begins with 1, curiosity, 2, conviction, and 3, commitment. These are the themes I find in Peter's origin story. The first thing we see in our story is curiosity, right? Let's look at the first time Peter ever even heard about Jesus. And this comes from John 1:40 to 42. So Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, was one of the two who heard what John had said and who had followed Jesus. The first thing Andrew did was find his brother Simon and tell him, "We have found the Messiah, that is, the Christ." And he brought him to Jesus. So the story starts with Peter hearing about Jesus, and it starts with curiosity, which grows as Peter does something with that curiosity. He goes to find out more about this Jesus, and he's rewarded for that. And I would say that actually every relationship with God needs curiosity, right? It's a powerful motivator. It's like the driving force of creativity and life interest. And just think about it. Anything that is meaningful, right? What makes deep friendships is actually genuine interest in people's life stories and genuine concern for their well-being. What makes people stick to Korean dramas for years and years? It's the need to know and experience. What gets people like pulled into the black hole of YouTube and Wikipedia until like ungodly hours of the morning, like 4 a.m. It's curiosity. I remember a while back, I used to work at this really oddball job at a rain barrel warehouse. And the whole job was just an accumulation of all things boring and menial, right? And working there killed a bit of my soul because we'd just be doing the same repetitive tasks over and over again. And in the midst of all that, I remember my manager. And he's just this guy who was so cheery and bubbly when he came into work. And initially, I just thought to myself, okay, that's just his personality. But as I got to know him more, I realized he actually had a very active mind when it came to his work. He's one of those dudes who were super environmentally conscious. So he loved the fact that our work in making rain barrels helped the city save water and help plants grow. And even when he wasn't working, right, he would be involved in a bunch of different environmental projects. And his work motivation compared to mine was like night and day, right? If he was like a ray of sunshine and I was a zombie because I couldn't care less. I just wanted the next paycheck. But that's what curiosity does to a person, right? You could say that he was curious, always learning, always passionate about doing what was right, and making the connection between his job and his greater mission in life did wonders in his life. But here's the thing with curiosity, right? It's only good for you if you actually do something with it, right? If you followed up by action of some sort. Like just imagine, for example, you're a single person and you're looking for that awesome life partner. And let's say every time someone piques your interest, you let your curiosity take over, and then you spend like a good 5 minutes imagining what life would be like with them. And you're like, dude, that's awesome. And then you do nothing about it after. How high are your chances of getting a partner? Well, it's next to nada, zip, right? It doesn't work. Curiosity has to be followed by a response. And the same goes with our curiosity about Jesus, right? It has to be followed by a response, right? Lean into the mystery of God and always strive to learn more about Him. Think deeply about theology. Think imaginatively when you're reading the Bible, and have your other curiosities inform you more about God. I have a friend, and every time we come together, we have these like long and deep talks about God, and they're derived from so many different passions, like where it comes from like quantum physics and philosophy, ethics, history, sociology, psychology, science, and a bunch of seemingly different things that help us know more about God, to help us think differently about God. Don't ever just be satisfied and stagnant with what you know about God, right? Ask questions, theorize, and then write those thoughts down, because those are valuable thoughts, right? What I do is I have a WhatsApp message on my phone, and it's a WhatsApp message to myself. Yes, I talk to myself on WhatsApp, and I would write down those questions, and I would try to answer them, And sometimes I couldn't answer them, but I can always go back and recall and use that to continue thinking. And then finally, enjoy that process, right? Because personally, I imagine that we get the privilege of learning more about God for eternity, right? Even heaven, it's not like the moment we get to heaven, we understand everything about God. No, it's a curiosity and it's a hunger that lasts forever, that we get to enjoy forever, but it gets to start right now. So back to our story, right? Peter followed his curiosity for a while, for a worthy question, and his curiosity led him to the next episode in his relationship with Jesus, which leads us to our next point, actually, a conviction. I'll read it out to you. It comes from Luke 5, 1-9. One day, as Jesus was standing by the lake of Gennesaret, the people were crowding around him and listening to the word of God. He saw at the water's edge 2 boats, left there by the fishermen who were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, who is Peter, and asked him to put out a little far from shore. Then he sat down and taught the people from the boat. When he finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into deep water and let down the nets for a catch." Simon answered, "Master, we've worked hard all night and haven't caught anything, but because you say so, I will let down the nets." When they had done so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and help them, and they came and filled both boats so full that both boats began to sink. When Simon Peter saw this, he fell at Jesus' knees and said, "Go away from me, Lord, I am a sinful man." For he and all of his companions were astonished at the catch of fish they had taken. Cool story. Let's just imagine a little bit with me, okay? What would you do if you were in the fishing industry and you just had caught the biggest catch of your life? Actually, the biggest catch of anybody's life. I'll tell you what I would do personally. I'd probably start off by jumping up and down in celebration. Then I'd open up a sashimi restaurant just for myself. And then I'd go to a restaurant and I'd treat all my friends and my family. And then just live off that for a really long time. But I feel like that's what most of us would do. Maybe exclude the sashimi part. But what did Peter do? Peter, he bowed down to Jesus and he said, "Go away from me. Lord, I am a sinful man." What in the world? Why wasn't his reaction the same as my reaction? This is so weird, but if you just think about it a bit deeper, it becomes more clear, right? And it makes sense if you actually understand something about Peter, right? As a fisherman, he's not just some dumb idiot who goes around in the boat randomly and then drops his net down randomly and then waits a little bit and pulls up and he's hoping for fish. No, he's a professional, right? It's like a science to him. He knows his stuff and it's been passed down through generations and generations. And if he didn't catch any fish that day, he knows why. And he knows that there's not going to be any fish there. And he's not like some caveman who's like, "Huh? Why no fish?" This is his career, right? This is his profession. But our passage tells us that Peter was astonished when Jesus told them to try again and they caught boatloads of fish. Because Peter, he knew it was impossible, right? He knew it was a miracle. Peter knew he was in the presence of God, and that made Peter immediately aware of all of his flaws. He felt conviction. I remember as a kid in science class, the teacher took us to a website and kind of taught us about the size of things, right? Everything from the size of a quark or an atom to the size of stars and galaxies, right? We could kind of zoom in and out. And as we went through that website, it would kind of start with a human. And it would zoom out of the human and then it'd be like a house. And then it would just keep going and going. And It'd be like a neighborhood and a city, and then a province and country, continent, planet, and then the solar system, and then like the arm of the Milky Way, and then the Milky Way itself, like our galaxy, and then the clusters of galaxy, and it'd go out and out and out, and finally it'd be the estimated size of the universe. And I remember just as like that elementary school kid, I was mind blown and fascinated, but at the same time, I felt so like tiny and insignificant in the grand scope of the universe. I'm like, what's the point of my life? I'm just like so tiny, and I'm like nothing in a grandness of more nothing, right? Now imagine that feeling of tininess, but instead of size, it's greatness. Specifically, the greatness and the holiness of someone who had the authority of God and has done nothing wrong ever. And if I was Peter, standing in front of Jesus, knowing what Peter did, I would have reacted the exact same way. I would bow down to Jesus and be ashamed of my lack of greatness because I'd feel conviction. Now, the sense of conviction, what do we do with it? What do we do with it? The lie we often fall into is, if I'm lacking greatness, then I'll just make up for it, right? I'll make up for it myself. And that's the greatest lie that's ruining our relationship with God, is that we think we can save ourselves, right? And I still fall for this lie like almost every day. Sometimes I forget about the grace Jesus offers, and I think to myself that the good things I'm doing for others, the good things I'm doing for church, that's going to be the thing that saves me. That I'm going to stand in front of God at the end of my life and be like, God, look at me. I preached on Sunday, and I gave money to the poor. And that is not going to work. Right? It just means I don't realize the true greatness of Jesus and God and my own true lack of greatness. It's not like Jesus is perfect and then I'm just like a little bit off, right? Like an inch away, and if I tried a little bit harder, I'd reach Jesus' level of greatness. No, it's like the greatness of Jesus is an ocean, and I'm a hydrogen molecule. I'm not even water. And the greatness of Jesus is like the galaxy, and I'm like a speck of dirt. And if I think that I, as a speck of dirt, can reach the greatness of Jesus, to be in the presence of God on my own righteousness and my own goodness, then I'm deluded, right? Or I'm just really bad at math. Our conviction cannot lead us to actually working harder to make up for our suckiness, because that just means we don't understand how great the gap is between us and God. No, our conviction has to lead us to accepting Jesus as the only way we are saved and welcomed to the presence of God, into heaven. Jesus died for us so that we can be rid of our brokenness and filled with his greatness. And it's only after that faith in Jesus where we are led into both being saved and doing good eternal work. So never forget our need for Jesus, right? Do whatever you can to drill that into your head, right? Whether that is like a morning prayer every morning, or looking at a specific Bible verse every day, or what I like to do is just be in constant conversation with myself about the nature of grace, that grace is given and not earned. And as we practice to think that way, we actually become more Christ-like in the way that we love people. Because we can love people with humility now, knowing that we aren't great on our own, right? We're great because of Jesus. And that will change everything about us. It'll change the way we even see religion and Christianity. As we move on in our story, we see the third thing, commitment. Here's what's happening as Peter is bowing down to Jesus. This is half of verse 10 and verse 11. Then Jesus said to Simon, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you will fish for people." So they pulled their boats up on shore, left everything, and followed him. So our final point, it comes from an accumulation of all that has happened, our whole journey into one point. Peter kind of explores his curiosity about the Messiah. He hears the teaching of Jesus and he knows the theory. He sees the miraculous power and authority of Jesus, and from that he becomes convicted about this because of his lack of greatness in the light of Jesus. And now, after all of these findings, all of these conclusions, everything that he knows, he actually has to make a choice, right? To continue living this mundane life, catching fish, or to commit to following Jesus, to catch souls. And the latter decision is the beginning of a relationship with God. To commit to Jesus with everything you've got. And it's a hard decision, but if you take time to think about it, it's going to be worth it, right? These hard decisions that actually force you to choose between what's best versus what's comfortable, they're going to make all the difference in your life. Here's kind of like a recent example. If you've been kind of keeping up with the COVID situation in the States, it's quite tragic. Because here in Alberta and even Canada, the COVID pandemic seems to kind of be slowing down and getting better, right? But the U.S. has been in horrible shape. As of today, 136,000 people have died in the U.S. And within the last month, the number of infections have raised by 43%. And it's not like we're better than them genetically or anything. I'm not more immune to COVID than they are. We're all human beings. So what's the difference? And I'm going to be honest, there are a lot of different factors. But I think one of the biggest factors was that Canada was actually able to close up everything, right? They set up policies where we couldn't go out, we couldn't do anything, we had to work from home, while parts of America kept everything open, right? And they had like beach parties and COVID parties and all this stuff. And to be honest, I can't say I wasn't jealous as I was at home watching them on social media and like thinking, oh, they're having so much fun and I'm just stuck at home. But now in hindsight, I'm glad we took the approach that we did. We took the better long-term approach over the comfortable short-term approach. And I think that's what we need to do, right? A half-hearted response to COVID doesn't work, but neither does a half-hearted relationship with Jesus. Because here's the reality of Peter's choices, right? He's faced with two very different options that lead to two very different lives. So either one, he can give up everything to live a life for Jesus and to change the lives of countless people and to invest into eternity. And that's option one. When I see it, when I hear it, I'm actually terrified of this option because it sounds so hard and costly, and I don't want to give up everything I have. I don't want people to think poorly of me and say, oh, he's that Christian weirdo. But the reality is option two is just going to cost as much. For Peter, option two was to ignore the invitation, to do nothing, to not chase his curiosity, to ignore the greatness of Jesus, to remain a measly fisherman for the rest of his life. And then at the end of his life, it's to have all of his investments amount to, well, I guess as a fisherman, how many fish he caught, and nothing more. That's all of his life. And if you ask me, that sounds way more costly because it's costing all the potential of a great life in Jesus and is gaining nothing. We are faced with the same decision, and we can replace the label of Peter's fisherman with anything, right? Student, athlete, accountant, nurse, doctor, janitor, teacher, pastor, whatever. But it comes down to that option, right? Which option do we want to commit to? The one where we give up everything for Jesus, or we give up everything to be just that one thing, those labels? And please don't make a huge decision like this blindly. Because I know a lot of times Christianity is portrayed as kind of like a blind faith kind of religion, but it's not, right? We still have to see what is true, right? Be wary of what is sketchy. Weigh out the pros and the cons. And if you're convinced that there is a God that's holding the universe together and he's all powerful and all loving and all good, and he's inviting us into this like intimate and purposeful life with him, then what are we waiting for? Go all in, because nothing in life could be better than that. But if you're on the fence and you're unsure, then take your time to figure it out, right? Those doubts in those uncertainties. Finding the truth in these things is going to be the most important thing that you can do right now, because it will lead you to commit to the only life that will satisfy you. Seek out what is logically and empirically true, and live out your life according to that. And if you have no idea where to start, I like to hang out on YouTube. So one guy that helps me think through my doubts is this guy named William Lane Craig, and you should really have a look at him on YouTube. He's a really good thinker. And that ends my 3 points for our journey with Peter today. So let's end with a bit of a recap. Right? In our Bible story this week, we see the beginning of Peter's relationship with Jesus, which shows us how our relationship with Jesus begins in our own lives. So it starts with curiosity, where we grow in the knowledge of God and in the story of Jesus, and this knowledge of him actually leads us to being convicted of our flaws. But at the same time, it actually invites us into the greatness of Jesus as we accept him as Lord and Savior. And all of this leads to the third one, commitment, where we follow him with everything we have because we know that is the best life we could possibly have. As a response, we'll end with the Lord's Prayer. Please join me. It goes like this. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Thanks for joining us again. Go in peace and serve the Lord. Bye.